friends, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy you're here today because I'll be talking about the rest of the books I ended up reading in August. August turned out to be a really great reading month, even with all the stuff going on. I went back to work full time and I was still working part-time, and yeah, and I've got Halloween decor hunting and I vlogged a bunch. So yeah, I ended up talking about a lot of these books in vlogs. I'll link all of them in the description box, and also my recent reads, the books I read at the beginning of the month. But I'm gonna start with some little horror novellas that I read, the most disturbing horror novellas that I read, starting with Gone to See the Riverman by Christopher Triana. This book disturbed me. Yes, in that vlog, I'm very disturbed. This is about a woman who is, I guess, in love with a serial killer, and she writes him in prison, and he basically sends her on a quest to go see the Riverman. This book is more on the psychological side of horror. I feel like there is some pretty gross stuff that happens in it, but it's more psychological, I think, because you're in the main character's head the whole time, and she's trying to, I guess, validate her feelings for this serial killer, but also revealing more of her past. That's horrifying. I think her present is horrifying, what she's doing is horrifying, but her past is even more disturbing and horrifying than her writing a serial killer. So that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg of this book. And then it gets so creepy and so eerie and weird and fantastic, and I highly suggest it. Next book I read for that vlog was The Laws of the Sky by Gregory Courteau. This is a French book that was translated, and I listened to it, and it had a great narrator, great British narrator in this. And this is about 6-year-olds, a group of 6-year-olds going on like a little overnight camping trip, and just some horrible stuff happens during this trip. There is an evil kid situation in this, and it's terrifying. It's a terrifying book. I was just kind of like, who would have thought of this book? This book is so dark, but it's also very beautiful. And yeah, the ending is the most nihilistic ending I think I've read in a really long time. And yeah, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And I ended up giving this 4 stars. I also ended up giving Gone to See the Riverman 4 stars. I think I forgot to talk about that. But yeah, highly suggest checking both of these out. I know The Laws of the Sky is on Scribd. Gone to See the Riverman, ebook. And the last book that I ended up reading for that vlog was Plastic Monsters by Daniel J. Felipe. This was actually a nice little break from the disturbing books. This is disturbing because it's a Daniel J. Felipe book. It is an extreme horror book, but I feel like it's not quite as extreme as Talia or Billy Silver, or even Only Psychos that he did. And this is a newer release, and this cover is absolutely gorgeous. I love this cover so much. It makes me want to buy the physical version too, but I got this on ebook. And this is about a woman who's obsessed with being beautiful and the lengths that she'll go to be beautiful. And I loved it. And it was disturbing, yes, but it was more fun because it was kind of zany, and it reminded me of American Horror Story episode, and yeah, I really liked it, and I think I ended up giving this like a 3.5 star or a 4 star as well. The next book I ended up reading in August was The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. I ended up reading this for Amy Newell's Dark Heart Book Club pick for August, and it is a sci-fi horror book, and I do see this listed as cosmic horror, but I didn't really get cosmic horror vibes. It's more sci-fi horror for me, and this is about a woman that takes on like an expedition for a lot of money. It's kind of sketchy. She's going alone into like caving systems, and she doesn't quite know why she's there. She doesn't trust her handler because there's typically numerous handlers, because they basically have to be awake the whole time they're awake, but also like their lookout for when they are sleeping down in the caves, because they are on an alien planet and there's alien forms in these caves. And yeah, there's a lot of back and forth between just two characters in this. I think it leans more psychological horror as well, like a psychological sci-fi horror. I did like this book, but I can see why people don't like it because the romance in this is kind of like, it felt more like Stockholm Syndrome to me towards the end. But anyways, I had fun with this. I liked some of the spooky scenes in this. I liked the body horror aspects with the suit. And yeah, I liked it, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I will link the live show in the comments down below where we talked about it. And yeah, I suggest this if you are into sci-fi horror for sure. I actually listened to the audio and started off like going along with it, but there is a map that will come in handy, and it doesn't look like much, but it did come in handy while reading it. The next book I ended up reading in August was The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, and I absolutely loved this. I talk about this in a vlog as well, and I had so much fun with this. I read it very quickly. I was very invested in this weird story, and I talk about this in my cosmic horror recommendations books too, because this goes there with the cosmic horror, and it's horrifying. It's so weird and horrifying, and I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. And it's about a woman who moves in with her uncle, like in a mystery shack situation, like a weird kooky museum in a small town, and they find like a secret passageway, and that's all I'm going to say about this. The ending of this did feel a bit zany to me and weird. Zany and weird, and it was really tough not to just like laugh out loud during the climax, the most intense part of this. I found it hilarious, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. It would have been 5 stars if I was a little bit more scared at the end, and then the ending also felt very rushed. It was just kind of like, oh, this is what I do, but yeah. Next book I ended up reading was Dark Harvest by Norman Patridge, and this is a little novella that takes place on Halloween. It is about like a big annual chase in this small town, and whoever wins gets money to move out of the town. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about this. This is a perfect Halloween book, and it really went there with some violence that I wasn't expecting in this. But I will say the ending was a bit predictable to me, and what it reminded me of is what it is like is super spoilery. The ending. I think in my vlog where I read this, I do mention like deep in the description box, you know, avoid spoilers, but this is what it's like, and it's very similar to a very recent book, that new book that yeah, I don't know. I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give anything away, but because it's very short. But yeah, there is a movie, and the movie's rated R, and I guess I thought this was a middle grade when I started it, but it is not. It's not a middle grade. Next book I ended up reading in August, I listened to from Libby, and that is Devolution by Max Brooks. This is kind of like a found footage Bigfoot book about a kind of like a hippie little town, Earth Town, Earth conscious community, I guess, that kind of gets cut off from civilization after an avalanche, and there's Bigfoots, and the main character in this, I guess that we follow her diary entries, was so annoying. I don't know if it was just the narrator, I don't know, but the beginning of it started out really good. I was really invested in this, but then I just got really bored, and I was kind of annoyed. And yeah, I wasn't too impressed with it. Even towards like the ending, when you start getting more, I guess, Bigfoot stuff, I was just like, I don't really care anymore. So I think I'm leaning towards like a 1.5 or a 2 star for it. I was not impressed at all, and it really felt like a like a chore to finish this book. The next book I ended up reading in August was My Soul to Keep by Tana and Marie Du. I also talk about this in a vlog. I feel like everything I talked about is in a vlog for August. This is about a woman who is a journalist, and her career is very important to her, and weird stuff starts to happen around her when she starts to break some, I guess, big, not cases, but big stories that are happening in like elder care folks' homes. And her husband, you get his point of view as well, and he is actually an African immortal. So he was turned immortal, and it's not your typical vampire situation. It's similar to some extents, but it's very different in others. And it's funny because you get both points of views in this story, and it felt like a TV show to me, because here's the husband trying to kind of keep this secret, even though it's been a while. They have a kid together, and yeah, she's just going to figure it out because she's a journalist and that's her job. And I loved that aspect of this at the beginning, how it played with that, how the story unfolded, I guess. And their romance, there's a lot of romance in this. It's very believable romance. Tana and Marie Du can write some spicy scenes, and usually she mixes it with the horror. That doesn't really happen in this one. I guess towards the end it might, because some stuff happens in this, and you're like, oh no, throughout, and that's what kind of kept me hooked. But it is pretty long, but yeah, it's awesome. It's a great story. I'm surprised I don't see this one talked about a lot, maybe because it's not like a typical vampire story, but yeah, I highly suggest it. I enjoyed it. I want to move on with the series. I think I'll give it like 4 stars or 4.5 stars. And the next book I finished was Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. It's a little novella, it's a little grief horror novella here, about a woman who lost her son in a car accident, and she goes and visits that white cross on the side of the road, grieving him, and she happened to have a cut one day, and it ended up bleeding into the ground, and stuff starts to happen, and that is all I'm going to say about this. I freaking loved the ending of this. I feel like I also just talked about this in a vlog this week, so you guys probably already saw me talk about it. I really liked the ending of this. It felt cinematic, but throughout it, like the beginning especially, if you don't like grief horror, this one is not for you, because I was like crying, and it felt very close to grief in this. It felt very close to grief in this. It felt very similar to me watching somebody grieve. I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird experience, but the ending is so good. Oh my gosh. And it's very spooky throughout. And I think I'm leaning towards 5 stars. And the next book I ended up reading was Just Like Home by Sarah Galley. I listened to this on Scribd, and I really like the narrator. This is the same narrator for Echo Wife, but this book is so hard to get into. First of all, it's very hard to get into. It's very slow, and the writing. Okay, I get the writing's good. The writing is good, but there's some descriptions in this where I'm like, hello, Sarah Galley. I'm Katrina. I'm a normal person. For the most part, I'm like an average run-of-the-mill person. I do not have a degree in English. She has weird descriptions of stuff in this, like they turned over like a wet spider. Like what Sarah got? Nobody's seen a wet spider flip over. I haven't. I don't expect to see that in my life. That's what I'm talking about. It felt very pretentious and very weird descriptions of stuff. I was just like so over it. I was like, take out like 20% of this, please. And the ending ended up being so bizarre and weird, and I thought I would really like something like that. If you've read it, you're probably like, oh, Katrina might like this. Katrina might like this ending, but I just thought it was just out of nowhere, kind of, and I don't know what to think about this book. I think it's more, yeah, literary than horror for sure. It's just like, not too impressed with it, and I'm thinking towards like 2.5 star or 3 star. How could I forget to almost talk about this book, The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. I listened to from Audible this month, and boy, oh boy, I know everybody's talking about this book right now. It is a dark thriller. I think this is more into the horror genre, like horror thriller genre, and boy, oh boy, it's very, very dark. Definitely look up the trigger warnings for this one going in. It will make you insanely mad. It will make you insanely mad. I'm still mad about this book. Not that anything in the book, it just is what it addresses in everyday life for women. And I kind of talk about that in my vlog when I read this too. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you kind of go about your day, I don't know, not suppressing stuff, but you're just like, acknowledge it and put it away. Acknowledge it and put it, like, compartmentalizing stuff. And this book like makes that box want to explode out into the world and just burn it down. Burn it all down. Oh, it's so good. And this is writing that I can get behind in this. The writing is so good in this. And Shay as a main character is so good. I was like very impressed by this character. She seemed so real, and yeah, I won't forget it for a very long time. You're probably like, what the heck is this book about? This book is about a woman named Shay who finds out one of her friends from college has killed themselves, kind of in a similar way that a friend from college when she was there killed themselves. Back in New York, she's in Texas, and she goes, and her friend is a podcaster, and they kind of team up to solve a mystery around these suicides. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say, because I really think everybody should read it. And I do know this is probably listed as like a cult book. I will say it is a cult book, but it's not a typical cult. I'm being very vague again, but trust me, check it out. I think you'll like it. I do think it leans more horror than thriller at points, but yeah, it's still a thriller, so it's very quickly paced. It's very fast paced, and you'll love it. The next book I ended up reading in August was Within These Walls by Anya Alburn. I read this for Kelsey's book club pick, Kelsey from Slime and Slashers, for August, and Kelly Hooked on Books was the co-host, and I will link the live show down below as well and tag them to go check it out, because it was a lot of fun. Kelsey's book chats are so much fun. If you ever see it live, just pop in the chat. It's a great time, whether you read the book or not. Just be there. No, I had fun. I had more fun, honestly, talking about this book than reading it, I think. This is so long. This book, I think, is 400 pages, and the audiobook is like 14 hours. It's a dense one for Anya Alburn. I feel like her books are generally like 300 pages, if that, maybe 250. Anyways, this is a cult book. This is about a true crime writer who moves into a house where some cold murder-suicides happen, and he brings his young 12-year-old daughter there, and you get the POV of the daughter and him, and the POV of the daughter was kind of annoying to me. She's kind of a brat, but hey, she was dragged across the country during summer away from her friends and stuff. Like, that would suck. I understood where she was coming from. And there's some spooky stuff happening. There's a lot of like ghostly stuff happens in this with the daughter, and while the dad is just stressed out over money and trying to get his interview and trying to hit his deadline, and there's like weird neighbors, and like there's just like a bunch of weird stuff happening in this. What got me to like this book, I guess, is the ending, because throughout it I was honestly like, this is very boring for a non-Anya Alburn book, because usually her books are like wham bam thank you ma'am, you know, like hello, like this is happening, it's horrifying, and it's very fast paced. This was very slow, and I was like, when is something going to happen? And then the ending happened, and I was like, hello, yes, I love that ending. So it's more of a 3.5 star, 4 star for me, and yeah, I'm excited to read I think her new one's Dark Across the Bay or something. So yeah, I'm excited for that one now, because while I was in this one, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna read another one of her books, because this is very boring, but I ended up really liking it. Okay, so the last book I ended up reading in August was a reread, and this book is free on Audible for Audible members to listen to. It's My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I read this physically the first time like 2 years ago, so it was so much fun to actually listen to the audiobook, and I loved it. Of course, I gave it 5 stars my first read, and I ended up giving it 5 stars again. It is such a great story about friendship, and you know, don't let Satan win. Satan, not today. Don't let him in. It's such a great 80s book too, and yeah, there's a lot of like 80s pop culture stuff in this. Like E.T. is very much in the beginning of this, and I'm an 80s baby, but I mostly grew up in the 90s, but E.T. played like a huge part in my childhood too, I feel like. So I really loved the E.T. stuff in this, and the just the friendship stuff. Like I feel like Grady Hendrix really captured 2 girls being best friends, because everything weird and kooky and inside jokes and stuff like that is what friendship is, and I absolutely loved it. And I've heard, you know, like people's biggest thing with this is the ending and like how cheesy it is, and I'm like, yes, it is cheesy, but it's great, and I loved it, and I think it's the most Hallmark horror book you'll ever read, and it's fantastic. And I highly suggest it if you have not read this yet. You will be reading it in October. You just do it. You will not regret it. Okay, so that is the rest of the books that I read in August. I feel like that was an insane amount of books, but let me know your favorite book that you read in August, or a book that you were just lukewarm on, or a book that you hated in August. Anything, books, let me know. And you guys have a great day. Bye!